anybody falls off the grid, especially the prime minister of a country, Robin.
Absolutely. All right, Rob, thank you.
Boy, that is worrying.
And for more on where Jose is headed, let's go back to Ginger.
And that's the thing, Michael. The tropical storm force winds, you saw Adrian's hair blowing there, they actually extend 310 miles now, from the center. So that's more than 600 miles across. And that's why you'll see gusts to Atlantic City, 51 miles per hour. That's this afternoon. I think this will affect some of the airports, especially into New England tomorrow. So if you have a flight tomorrow, Boston, and look at Provincetown and Nantucket, both closing in for that 40 to 60 mile per hour gusting. And that's, of course, with 1 to 3 or 3 to 5 inches of rain. So it's like a nor'easter, just really focused there in the New England.
On the island of Guadeloupe. Oh my gosh, look at those winds. You can see the winds are bending trees, they're threatening power lines. The storm is expected to make a direct hit on Puerto Rico tomorrow. Meteorologist Chad Myers is tracking the path of the storm for us. What now, Chad?
Boy, what pictures there. The storm has just the eye wall, just passed over Guadeloupe proper, but overnight, Dominica took the brunt of it. 73,000 people felt a Category 5 hurricane right over the top. This weather is brought to you by Purina, your pet, our passion. The next stop for this is St. Croix, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. 160 miles per hour. At 5 o'clock, it was a Cat 4 at 155. At 5:10 a.m., they upgraded it back to Cat 5. So if you're looking saying, wait, Cat 4. No, it is truly now another Cat 5 hurricane. Moving very close to Puerto Rico. This is the problem here. Does it move on this side of the cone up to the U.S. Virgin Islands and the BVI, or to the south toward Ponce? We don't know. But Puerto Rico, you're right in the middle. That would be Conquistador. That would be Palmas del Mar. This is the area that we're most concerned about. Then eventually the storm does take a turn to the right and into the Atlantic Ocean. All models think so as well. Guys, this is going to be a one to watch here for Puerto Rico. 3.5 million people. The last time they've been hit this hard, 1932. About 1.5 million people then.
Maria, Chad.
Well, the storm moved right over Dominica overnight as a Category 5 hurricane. And even the southern tip of Guadeloupe had the northern eye wall, the most dangerous part, near Vieux-Fort. Other than that, I think the storm is now in open water and headed to St. Croix. I know you just talked to that man in St. Croix. I don't know how you can be as prepared as you can get for a Category 5 landfall. I know you think you're ready, but boy, hours and hours of wind speeds, about 160 miles per hour for that island, St. Croix, and then into Puerto Rico. It stays either a 4 or a 5, right on the edge. 157 is the edge. It goes from 155 to 160 and then back and forth. Close enough for me. But a direct landfall either near Puerto Rico or possibly up to St. Croix or even a little bit farther north. Here's the U.S. Virgin Islands. Here's the BVI. Less likely, I think, this morning down near Ponce, but we will continue to watch it. Still in the cone. And then the cone turns right. The cone does turn away from the U.S. at the very last minute over the Turks and Caicos and into the Bahamas. There's where Irma went. And this is where Maria is going. So crossing right over the Turks and Caicos, and it will be a very significant storm for the Turks and Caicos as well. Now let me get you to the floor, and you can expect what here the windfall is going to be across this area for the next couple of days. Just notice the white. It's the most damaging part. It's well over 100 miles per hour, and that moves right into Puerto Rico, Vieques, all the way up to Culebra, and even into the U.S. Virgin Islands that were hit so hard with Maria. Then across from Puerto Rico and northward, very heavy winds, much harder hit in San Juan than the last storm, then into Irma, and then finally into the Turks and Caicos, and then kind of sliding up toward the north and toward the northeast. Allison.
Okay, Chad, thank you very much. We'll check back, obviously, with you as soon as possible.
Tall office buildings shaking, large pieces of debris, sheets of glass, all, as you can see, crashing to the ground. The President of Mexico saying dozens of structures in Mexico City have been completely destroyed, collapsed, as you see on your screen. And the number of dead, as I said, tragically has been rising and very quickly. It was only 42 within the past hour or so. Now 116 known to be dead. An untold number are injured as they are searching in those collapsed buildings right now and hoping to save lives. Across the country, millions are without power. And this disaster coming as a monster Category 5 hurricane is tearing across the Atlantic, about to make landfall again. Maria at this moment on a collision
this bond is the
source.
Virgin
Islands and Puerto Rico. Officials warning residents to evacuate or die. Maria is expected to make landfall in hours, packing sustained winds of 165 miles an hour. The National Weather Service predicts catastrophic damage for more than 3 million Americans on those islands. The storm right now with a life-threatening combination of extremely high winds, storm surge, heavy rainfall, and massive flooding. Up to 2 feet of rain expected. That's sort of a combination of Harvey and Irma in one. A lot to get to tonight. We want to begin with Paulina Gomez-Wolschner out front tonight in Mexico City. Paulina, look, this happened on the anniversary of the massive earthquake in Mexico City. Stunning and jarring, and obviously massive damage and a death toll tonight.
Good night, Erin. Indeed, it was horrible. Just to feel the earth shaking once again, just after that horrible earthquake hit Mexico in September 7th. Once more, we got hit by this massive earthquake. The damage is all over the city. Over 30 buildings collapsed. There are at least 30 people dead in Mexico City and 8 missing. And these 8 missing people are inside of a lab that collapsed in Roma Norte, in the neighborhood Roma Norte. And let me tell you, this is just where I live. And the whole area was evacuated because there's half and hydrogen leaks all over the neighborhood. So it's very dangerous now in this minute in this area of Mexico City.
And of course, they are searching for more survivors right now. Paulina, thank you. I want to go straight to Ricardo Ramos, who joins me on the phone. Ricardo, you're also in Mexico City. You were actually in a restaurant as this earthquake struck. You took a video of exactly what you saw. What did this feel like?
Hi, good afternoon. It was definitely a crazy experience. I was here for the earthquake that happened 2 weeks ago, but this one was much stronger due to the...
Just write it out. At this point, it's truly about protecting life. Property, it should be second or third or even last on the list. It's all about protecting lives now with this system. In terms of myself and my crew...
A little over a minute, so it was definitely the scariest minute of my life, I will say that.
I mean, it's stunning when we look at these pictures. You know, we're seeing giant pieces of glass fall from buildings, and the way that those lights were shaking at the restaurant you were in, that wasn't a sway. That was a very dramatic shake that we're seeing. I mean, how did that feel like? What went through your mind as all of a sudden this started?
Absolutely. Well, it's funny because they had a drill this morning. I love it. There's the drill they've been doing ever since the earthquake of the 80s. So at first I thought it was a drill, but I'm like, wait a second, no, it's actually shaking. So you don't really feel fear in the moment. It's this instinct of grabbing things and making sure you find safety and that everyone else is safe. It's afterwards where you're like, what just happened?
And after, as you ran out, as you say, on instinct, you got out of that room where those lights are shaking. You now, obviously, we understand dozens of buildings have collapsed. The death toll right now, Ricardo, is 116. It has gone up very rapidly in the past hour. People could be trapped in some of these buildings. What kind of destruction have you seen as you have, as you walk back from the restaurant, even?
Yeah, I mean, starting with the restaurant, the lights, the power went out right away. A lot of sparks in the street, cracked buildings, glass on the floor from broken windows. I personally did not see any of the demolished buildings, but it was definitely a lot to see. I had to walk all the way back from Colonia Roma to Polanco, which is where I'm staying. And it took me about an hour, so I got to see a lot during that hour walk.
All right, well, Ricardo, thank you very much. I mean, it's just amazing to look at these pictures. You think just a structure sitting there on the anniversary of that earthquake, and then all of a sudden this happens. It is just stunning, and we're covering the story, and of course, hoping that we're going to hear about some big rescues and people saved from some of these collapsed buildings. As I said, right now, the death toll 116 confirmed, a number which has unfortunately risen very quickly in the past few moments. I want to go straight to our other breaking story, Hurricane Maria, which is a deadly Category 5 storm, decimating islands as it churns in the Caribbean. It is headed directly for Puerto Rico. The warnings there is as serious as it possibly can be. They said evacuate or die. That's the warning. And this is a new video right now. This is the U.S. Virgin Islands. Winds and waves are getting more dangerous by the minute as that storm approaches. Tom Sater is out front tonight. And Tom, I can't believe we're talking about those islands being struck again and Puerto Rico with what they say is an evacuate or die hit.
Yeah, Aaron, and a lot of people evacuated to San Juan from the islands. We have new information now. It's kind of hard to fathom here because we thought Irma was this massive monster, which it was, And now we've got a storm that's getting stronger as the hours progress. We have a pinhole eye. It's not the larger storms that are always the most destructive. Sometimes the smaller an eye, more compact storm, the more ferocious they can be. Irma had an eye about 23 miles in diameter. This is 11 and a half. And look at the winds. 2 hours ago, they were 160. The last hour, 165. That would still make it the strongest hurricane ever to make landfall in Puerto Rico, and now we've just dumped to 175. This is amazing. Look how the colors, how compact they are. We call this an annular hurricane. It's like a little cannonball. This is going to create a world of problems. It's 70 miles now from St. Croix. Don't think they're going to take a landfall, but anything's possible. Hoping to get a secondary band around this radar. That would tell us it's undergoing an eye wall replacement cycle. And why do we want that? Because it can lose some strength when it goes through that process. That's the only thing that could be helpful to St. Croix, U.S., British Virgin Islands, which are getting pounded right now by the waves of rainfall, and for Puerto Rico. But we're going to look at this a little closer here because the track takes it right over Puerto Rico around 8 or 9 in the morning, shoots it up toward the Turks and Caicos. They're now under hurricane watch, southeast Bahamas, and then slides it up the coast, keeping it away from the shoreline. But we get in closer, and you look at the path difference between Irma. Irma stayed off the coast of Puerto Rico by 50, 55 miles, and they still had 1 million people lose power. In fact, they've been in a recession since 2006. Unemployment's like 10.1%. Their massive labor force has been leaving, heading to the U.S. They need power, and they're going to need more of it. This is a population density map. Notice the bright red. So that's where you have the higher population numbers. And this is San Juan, Aaron. This is in the wrong place to be, as the storm will really create a high force of wind there, knocking power out, could be to the entire country.
I mean, Tom, it's stunning, and you talk about a storm that is, as you say, sort of a cannonball. It's so compact with that eye. Right. And now the winds have gone from 165 to 175. Can it get stronger and stronger? I mean, the thing about this storm that has been so shocking is how quickly it has accelerated. Right. I mean, it's as if it were, some sort of a Lamborghini. It just all of a sudden it has taken off.
Yeah, we saw this with Irma. I mean, in a 15-hour time period, this jump from a 1 to a 5, I mean, that's just outrageous. Since 1851 till last year, 2016, the number of Category 5s that made landfall in the Lesser Antilles was 0. We've had 2 this month, and we've got a monster now bearing down on St. Croix and Puerto Rico. We're next. We'll be watching it in the days ahead, but this is going to be a rough overnight period, but a real rough day tomorrow, because it won't be until tomorrow, late in the day, tomorrow evening, that the system may finally take those tropical storm force winds, Aaron, away from Puerto Rico.
All right. Thank you very much, Tom. And as we're tracking this, I want to go to Nick Payton-Walsh, because he is in Puerto Rico, where that eye, that pinhole eye, Nick, that you're hearing about is expected to slam into the island just hours from now. And, Nick, what are you feeling right this moment?
Well, you can see, obviously, the rain has begun here in the last hour or so. It's really picked up as the sky has darkened. We're still 12 hours away from pretty much right behind me on the coast here, the east coast. Palma del Mar is where I am in Puerto Rico, where we're supposed to see first landfall, potentially 165 miles an hour, this storm, as you were hearing. And it potentially will leave all of its energy on Puerto Rico at this point. It's supposed to go right across the island through San Juan, the capital, and then begin potentially to slow as it leaves the island itself. But you mentioned Hurricane Irma there, $1 billion of damage, 46,000 people still now without power 2 weeks after that hit. That caused a glancing blow. This is going to go straight through the island itself, and we've seen water being rationed in cell, queues for gas at this stage, boards being put up on businesses, hotels all over the place. I'm in a seaside resort here that's being cleared out, despite the fact, bizarrely, in the last hour we've seen people in their beach buggies popping down to the coastline to get a final look as the storm begins to loom here. People taking the warnings, I think, to some degree seriously, but you're never going to know, really, until the real ferocity of the wind hits who's been carrying away from the flood areas. We're talking possibly about 11 feet of storm surge. That's when water is pushed violently ashore by the ferocity of the storm. That's almost twice my height here, and maybe 25 inches of rain at some point too. So a lot happening in the next 48 hours in Puerto Rico. The question is, are they still in a heightened state of readiness because of Hurricane Irma? We simply don't know, or has so much damage already been done that they're weakened to the point where this enormously direct blow could be devastating. You have to be over 89 years old, Erin, to have seen anything like this potentially to hit Puerto Rico before. Dangerous day ahead.
And it's amazing when you're talking about 25 possible inches of rain, storm surge of 11 feet, a storm that is possibly going to end up being stronger as it strikes than, of course, Irma. So you're looking at Harvey and Irma, in a sense, combined. I mean, this is a monster of a storm. The warning where you are, Nick, evacuate or die. Are people heeding that?
Yes, as far as we can tell. I have strangely seen some locals here who are clearly not running for their lives. It's hard to get a broader sense. We heard from the government earlier on today that they were seeing lesser numbers in the shelters than they had perhaps expected. Maybe people have moved further inland. It's these flood risk areas that are most to be concerned about. Hurricane Irma took 3 lives, 1 in a traffic accident, 1 through electrocution, and 1 somebody being evacuated to shelter. So, you know, people are more worried, I think, about what the water does as it moves in huge volumes. It will be an area like this we expect potentially to be underwater in the sort of day ahead. But yes, the broader question is, as you say, how seriously have the warnings been taken? I think it's pretty clear people have heard them. The issue is, do they really buy the idea that this is a once-in-a-century meteorological event that could, frankly, devastate this impoverished island?
And where do you go during the actual, as it strikes? I presume you'll move from where you are, or no?
Well, when we stop talking, I probably won't move from here, but we're going to move into probably the second floor of the buildings nearby, trying to get a gauge between being able to see how the storm moves and keep ourselves further enough away from it. But I have to say, it's in the last hour or so that we've seen the rains pick up, and we are still a solid 12 hours away from the ferocity of the storm actually hitting. This is just the beginning.
All right, please stay safe, Nick. Thank you. And next, breaking news, Paul Manafort making demands tonight about his intercepted phone call.